All right. Well, I'm glad to have my friend here, NBA insider Brandon Scoop B. Robinson. We're going to go for about 30 minutes here on the show and just talk some basketball, mostly some NBA, but maybe some other stuff too. But good to see you, my man. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. I'm glad to be here. And unfortunately, we lied. Ain't gonna be no damn 30 minutes. It's gonna be longer than 30 minutes, but we'll pretend that it only lasts 30 minutes. But I respect you as well, and have had memorable times over at Basketball Society. LeBron James Space Jam, LeBron James going to the Lakers, Anthony Davis going to the Lakers, and we Kevin Durant speculating behind the scenes about the Lakers, ultimately going to Brooklyn with Kyrie. But here we are now, man. Many years later, still running our domains, and I'm glad to partake in a good basketball conversation with you.
It's embarrassing for me as a basketball fan and as an NBA fan, just this component, and we'll talk some other stuff, but I just when I see that the NFL is able to get Beyonce and Kendrick Lamar and all the NBA can produce, and I know the All Star Weekend isn't the same as the Super Bowl. It's not the same budget. It's not the same level. But to roll out E40 and Saweetie and En Vogue when the NFL is rolling out Beyonce, Kendrick Lamar, like and it's to me even that was just indicative of how bad it is for the NBA right now. Like I get the Bay Area E40 from the Bay. That's cool. That's fine. But like we should be past that. The NBA should have enough resources at their disposal to at least make that an attraction.
I think it comes down to, you and I both have a church background. The the usher can also be the guest psalmist, meaning the guest singer. You have to delegate things accordingly, and I feel like because E40 was already in house, because some of these other artists were already there as fans. You also wanted to feature them as guest singers, and the guest singer needs to have a level of mystique, and I feel like that conversation was the conversation we were having about the Super Bowl. And by the way, you didn't ask, but I think the next person who should participate as a singer that bridges the gap between young, old, black, white, green, purple, orange is probably Adele for next season. I think she connects some dots.
For the
Um,
Super Bowl,
Super Bowl and for the NBA, it being in Los Angeles next year, or in Inglewood at the Intuit Dome, which is a dope arena. You got to check that out. I think that the whole process has to be um, snipped, remixed, and something anew. Also, I think TNT, because it was the last run in the NBA because of ratings and lack thereof, and as far as metrics go. I felt like it was a mail in, but I think there is potential because you have the resources available. Just because you have Shaq, Charles Barkley, and Kenny Smith on staff doesn't mean you exhaust all of their resources and know how just because you have them on staff. You have to add another component. And that's why I use the analogy of the guest usher can also be the singer. You have to have multiple delegates that can do just their job and go home. Uh, and I think that LA and the NBA and NBC returning for the 25-26 season is the signal for that, because I don't really know that just from my background and being around NBC, both as an intern at 30 Rockefeller Plaza in college, and also my experience being around NBA Inside Stuff and doing my radio show with the Nets as a child, and just knowing how NBC operates. I don't see them operating in that same vein that TNT did in conjunction with the NBA uh, that venue in Inglewood. I think the actual game itself is a separate. So we're talking about production there. The
right?
production is separate from, and I know just from being around, the actual game product itself is going to come down to them making some decisions The NBA has a lot of they have an influencer program at their disposal where they know who's up and coming, who's next, and if they don't think that person is, they can ask somebody else who is. And I think for the NBA, I think that they should take a similar approach that the NFL took in hiring out a Jay-Z
Yes.
who has a team who can tell them or instruct them on how this will go about. And personally, I would take on that challenge to advise the league in something like that because you have to have someone who has their ear to the street and who's a conduit between the player, the consumer,
Yeah.
uh, as well as just what there's a disconnect between the player, the consumer, and the administrative staff that is the NBA.
Yeah.
And so as I say that, I ponder this. One, when we were growing up, did our parents and our parents' age group say that things were corny, like we're saying things are corny now? Or was it just organic and good? That's the first thought. The second thought process is because of social media, everybody has an opinion. Prior to social media, there was a level of sacredness to all-star festivities. I've been around All Star when there was no social media. I've been around All Star when there was social media and people criticized. I've also been around All Star when there was social media and people said that it was good. I was in Toronto in 2016, which was the last good slam dunk contest between Zach LaVine and Aaron Gordon in Toronto. I just think that collectively the league should do a better job. I can't tell them what to do, but I think collectively they should do a better job of conversing with people who have the ear to the street and who are actually functioning as a conduit between the consumer, the player, and the upper management, and not just going by what upper management says because somebody cool that they think is cool told them that it was cool because there's a
Mm,
difference.
yeah, I feel like a lot of it is like simplifying even because I don't want to start proposing ideas and stuff. I'm not one of these that wants to start listing all the stuff they should do. But when I think about things that I would appreciate that they change up, it's simple things like I just want to go back to East West. I want that to be the thing. It seems like a lot of people do. And you've been covering a long time. You could be accused as being an old school guy in some circles, even though you are a forward thinking fashion and culture person. But I know you appreciate. I think you have a great balance, but I know you appreciate the traditions of things in some senses. Things evolve and things move on, and we should upgrade and update. But things like just the East West, just keeping it as simple as that. Just give us what we want. It's that simple. I think there's too many ideas with like leagues, even the in season tournament, the Shaq's team and Kenny's team. Like, what's with I? It makes my brain hurt. I don't want to have to think about anything about whose team and who's on which all-star team and who's the captain and who's this. I'm like, bro, can we just go back to some simple East versus West? And again, I don't. I wonder what you're thinking about, like these guys, John Morant and Zach LaVine. Like, do you think it's all talk, just prisoner of the moment with them tweeting saying, "Hey, I want to do it now," or do you think there's some genuine energy now for them to think, "Okay, let's bring some superstars back and get the Mac McClung thing. Let's put a wrap to that and get some stars back." Do you think there's real energy behind that?
Firstly, I want to address something that you said just about simplifying things. I have a great deal of respect for Commissioner Silver, have an open line of communication with Commissioner Silver, and have for the past 11 years always spoken fondly of him. He's always been kind to me. But I think Commissioner Silver, and this is not a butt to bash him, I'll never bash him, but I think that this is an interesting crossroads as we find a way to find the middle ground between digital, analog, and the future, particularly with elder statesmen like LeBron, who are entering towards the end, the Chris Pauls who are entering towards the end of their career, Carmelo who has retired and is now going into television and the Hall of Fame and more. And so I think that Adam Silver came into the NBA at a great point, post Donald Sterling, even in 2017, I think it was with North Carolina, him moving the All Star game to New Orleans because of just things that were going on that were more political, and then finding their way back. I think Adam Silver has done a good job so far. I think he is facing criticism now because I think there is a level of obsessiveness with tournament style competition for everything. And everything does not have to be tournament style. Some stuff is just a vibe, it's just a game and go on. I think that there is this European obsession, this FIBA obsession um, of the game, like even, reducing the minutes from 12 minutes to 10 minutes. He was spitballing, but he was serious. Anytime you do an interview and you go to the media and you suggest that that's what you're thinking, that's what you're doing, and you're trying to poll to see how people feel about it. That's what that was. And FIBA, the minutes are shorter, but I also understand that it is accommodating shorter attention spans, and also TV production. Again, there's the difference between the production and the game, and I acknowledge that. And so to your question about John Morant, Zach LaVine, Aaron Gordon, those people that I mentioned, um, they clear as far as attention spans. If you look at just mathematically, um, John Morant, um, prior to off-court issues, his social media numbers mirrored Steph Curry's, literally mirrored Steph Curry's. And so over the last couple of years, you've seen a rebrand. You're also seeing his team playing well again because if it wasn't off court issues, they were injuries. And so he, in my opinion, was soft launching his rebrand as far as participating in an NBA function. And what better way to usher that in is with NBC. Again, having been an NBC intern while I was in grad school and also being around the old NBA regime with Adam being the second in command next to David Stern, there's no way that Commissioner Silver goes to a new network with it being business as usual like it was in TNT. It's chop chop. So I think that what John Moran is saying has merit. Um, I don't know if Levine will participate. I haven't spoken to Zach about it, but what I can say is I remember when the All-Star game was in Chicago in 2020, and I had a conversation with Zach about whether or not he'd participate again. And he told me that he'd participate if he was voted in as an All-Star. I know that, the three-point shootout, he was shooting well that year too. I believe he was a participant in the three-point shootout. But I know that he wanted to be viewed as more than just a dunker. And I think that's a huge reason as to why he has kind of moved on in that vein. And I think now that he's in Sacramento with a new view on life higher up in the seedings in the NBA, I think that's something he'd consider. I don't think I'm speaking for him in saying that. I just think both he and John Moran have that in similar kind of, the throwback nostalgia of the slam dunk contest. It's on life support. Aaron Gordon did an interview recently and said that he has something left. So it'll be interesting to see how all three of those gentlemen function in that regard. 2016, I'm glad to have set out not only participated working in media but also in the back and kind of seeing the interworkings there with Zach and to see Zach's career grow from then on, as well as Aaron Gordon's as well.
Yeah. And I love the idea of John Morant using the dunk contest to kind of complete and replenish his rebrand next year. I love that line of thinking because I think that would make a lot of sense. Um, and yeah, so that I mean, again, I'm not out here complaining too much about All-Star Weekend. I would love it if it could just be simplified again. The competitiveness in the game, the last 10 minutes, fourth quarter, that whole thing. I think that's just up to the players and like the spirit of the weekend and who the players are. I mean, I just think that comes down to the energy of the weekend. And I just think you know this better than I do. I've covered All-Star weekends, but you've covered way more. The players have so much to do over the weekend that I feel like it's too easy to just go ahead and treat it like a holiday. like a vacation. And it's not too much to ask to come into the game and play hard at the end. But again, I just don't think the incentive is there because the weekend, why wouldn't you treat it more like a holiday or vacation than like and it's a work trip. You still can't treat it that way because they're still working. They've got events and stuff to do all weekend. So I mean, I get it on both sides.
In different time zones, you're looking at media availability, you're looking at promotional availability with your sneaker brands, with your leggings brand, with your sports drink brand, with your supplement brand, and then you're trying to find time to actually sleep and enjoy time with your family. Then on top of it, you're also having to play in a game where they're not playing defense. And I think I tweeted this the other day and got some interesting feedback. I tweeted, I had this conversation with a well-respected fixture in the NBA over the weekend, and they suggested to me, and I tweeted it that maybe the NBA should consider moving All Star Weekend to July. And if you move it to July, you still pick 24 players, and the stipulations have to be that you play at least 70 games during the season, which means that if they play those 70 games, that means fans will be able to see their favorite players in their home arenas when they go visit, and they spend a lot of money to go to those games. And at the same time, you incentivize it for the players by anyone who is selected, they receive a $1 million appearance fee, if you will, which means that guys are going to show up, play 70 games, and if they play well, they'll get extra money. And then people were saying in the comments, well, they're paid lots of money anyway. And my retort to that was, there were a lot of guys who went to the in-season tournament that if they won a $500,000. That's
Sure.
cool. So $1 million to play 70 games, and also you played in July after the season is over. To me, it only makes sense because um, the finals is over, and you got people still playing hard February, March, April that push to the playoffs. You solve
Right.
load management.
Yeah, that's interesting. Speaking of incentives, I do think that the one-on-one thing should garner some real energy. And going back to your point, which I couldn't agree with more, I don't know. I know people who do great basketball events. I did a couple decent ones years ago. I know people who could take the talent that the NBA has and put together some really dope. I mean, it's not hard with the resources and the talent they have. They should be able to pose some really dope ideas to these players. If Kevin Durant and Anthony Edwards and Kyrie Irving and James Harden and these guys are willing to do a one-on-one spectacle at All-Star Weekend, that should have been signed up yesterday. That needs to and do a cash prize. Give it a cash prize. Unrivaled has already shown them up. Unrivaled has because I mean the women. Let's just face it. The women are their egos aren't taking as big of a hit as the men. But KD's saying he'll do it. Anthony Edwards said. Kyrie said he wants to smoke. I think these guys would do it. What do you think? Here's my idea. Why don't we just get KD, Kyrie, and Harden, the Brooklyn Big Three? Let's just let them play. Let's just let them go round robin, king of the court. Wouldn't that be enough? I would be tuned in to watch that.
So I like the idea first and foremost. Secondly, um, the NBA, even though I'm talking about the experimental phase of what happens during All Star, if you remember maybe 10, 15 years ago, they tried something during All Star, the horse competition.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm mistaken, that was in Dallas in 2009 or 2010. I don't remember. It was one of those years.
Okay.
And and I remember like a ship, or like there were things that guys were doing. It was a whole thing and people laughed at it. There's such a thing as refining something that you started. And I think that the one-on-one portion of it, with Unrivaled, which who I think has done a wonderful job. I also think Unrivaled did a wonderful job of capitalizing off of the basketball dead time from when we had that impasse from when the All-Star game ended to when the regular season begins. I watched it that I think the day after President's Day, and it was interesting, especially when you have Angel Reese, who was easy on the eyes. You have a myriad of other players who were in that same vein. I thought that was intelligent. Then you have the on air talent like the Roscoe's on Wudays and others who were there. So I think Unrivaled has found their spots, and I think they're good at finding spots. They have their own lane on the road, and I think that's ingenious. And so to kind of add to that about your question about the NBA All Star Game, I think it would be in their best interest to do so. Because I think that they have relied so much on star power, and that can't uncorny corny in the sense of Kevin Hart yelling the whole game. It's not really like there are other comedians out there who I think would have done better, but I think oftentimes the NBA depends so much on just names and things. Names and following will carry you, and that's not always the case.
Yeah, and going back to the music thing, I didn't know who was performing at halftime, but I was like, please don't let it be Common or Jennifer Hudson. Lovely, wonderful black artists that we love, but it's like, dude, I mean, the NBA, it's embarrassing. Why can't we get music right? Like that's supposed to be our thing.
Let me ask you a question. How much of it do you think is people just complaining for sport versus it actually being equality? Because everybody has an opinion.
Sure. I think that it's I think it's a combination of both. I think there's legitimate things that just don't give it the same aura, doesn't have the same aura that it used to. Um, I think it's still entertainment. There are still entertaining factors, like even the Mac McClung thing. Like there's a whole debate about that. Well, people are talking about it. He's doing great dunk. He's a professional dunker, and it's still a spectacle because he's 6'1", 6'1" white kid who can do these crazy dunks. So there is still entertainment there. I just think the aura has changed. The nature of the league has changed, and it's affected the way I think players and the way the players approach the weekend and the way the consumers experience it.
Players know their worth, and because they know their worth, have exercised levels of self-preservation, and the consumer is angry about it.
Well, and so what do you so and I do want to move on because I know we can talk about any topic for as long as long as we want. Um because it is interesting like what do you think about the whole? Because I think this does naturally tie in just the nature of people are mad that this generation of players aren't like Kobe. A lot of people feel that the whole competitive nature of the game, all most what most people reference is Kobe late in his career, early in his career, whatever it was. The All Star game was a time to get after guys and get competitive and really send a message. And it's not treated that way anymore.
Guys are not just happy to be here anymore. One and two, they're stars before they step foot on the court. And but then you have people who wonder if um, guys are burnt out. You've seen flashes of it. Flashes of it. I'm not. I know in the era of cutting clips, people can get in trouble. So bear with me. You've seen flashes of it in the AAU era that both Zion Williamson and LaMelo Ball played in, where those guys became household names before they signed NBA contracts, and they get hurt a lot. And so you forget sometimes that LaMelo is still as young as he is, as well as Zion, because their names have been heard for so long. And then people talk about Zion's weight, and sometimes he's skinny, sometimes he's not, in people's perception. So I think to kind of piggyback off of that thought, in the age of aggregation, you have to attach those things. Otherwise, it'll say Scoop B said Zion Williamson is fat, and he didn't. But what I will say is that I think because players know their worth and because players have huge social media followings and big contracts, they see this as a vacation because they do so much traveling and it is and move here, do this, do this. The minute they can kind of just let loose and relax, they don't feel like playing defense. I'm not defending it. I just know the thought process.
For the Lakers, I'm sure they're even hoping if these conditioning things and Luka staying in shape, if those are like real deep seated issues, then from the Lakers' point of view, they have to be hoping that LeBron can be the perfect mentor for Luka as Luka takes on, being the face of the Lakers is going to be different than being the face of the Mavericks. Let's talk about the Lakers and Luka and LeBron a little bit. So I told you that I did an episode like a year and some change ago, like 2023 it would have been, where I was thinking, and I just went ahead and gave my take on it on the show, that, and I thought I referred back to your story and your report back in, I guess it would have been 2018 or 2019,
18,
about 20.
28, 7, September 15th or 16th, somewhere between the 15th and 17th of September in 2018.
And I was just looking at where Kevin Durant was at the time, which I think I think he had been traded to Phoenix already. I think he had gone from Brooklyn to Phoenix, and where LeBron was with the Lakers. Um, and I was already on this thing that I felt like people weren't talking enough about how the Lakers had a real challenge with LeBron still being like, it's a great story and it's a marvel to watch LeBron be still elite and still look like one of the best players in the league after the age of 35, now on to 40 years old. It's a great story, but it's not sustainable to treat him like he's still the best player in the league and like he's going to lead you to a championship. So my take over the last few years looking ahead was like, hey, Lakers, if you're about to be serious about making one last run, getting one more title with LeBron outside of the bubble in 2020, which a lot of people like to disregard, if you want to get one more with LeBron, you're probably going to need to take another big swing. The Russell Westbrook thing, they've been kind of toying and tweaking with the roster. I'm like, no, make another big swing for a big three. So unfortunately, this move for Luka had to include AD, but I wasn't that surprised because I'm like, hey, I mean, of course, the Lakers, that who wouldn't make that deal for Luka, but I wasn't that surprised because I'm like, hey, this is the kind of move I've been looking for years. Get LeBron another top 5 to 10 guy who also I think it's different, Brandon, when it's a guard because now Luka's actually running the team. AD never felt like he was. They talked about this succession plan where AD would take over the Lakers after LeBron. I'm like, yeah, that sounds good, but it's different when you have a guard. I think it's just different when it's a guard.
That succession plan with Anthony Davis was also supposed to include either Kevin Durant or Kawhi Leonard. KD ultimately went to the Nets with Kyrie, and Kawhi was toying with the Lakers and using that as leverage to go to the Clippers. And so that succession plan wasn't successful because they didn't have that third option. The Lakers were looking for a third option. And if you had three guys alongside LeBron and Anthony Davis, we might not have had that conversation. Personally, I think the Lakers pulled the trigger too soon on Kyle Kuzma, but Kyle Kuzma was a star and he knew it, or at least having star appeal. And I think his role in Milwaukee with the Bucks is everything that he was supposed to be in Los Angeles with the Lakers. It
Fair.
just takes
I
time.
like that too. I like that for him. I look forward to seeing that.
Yeah, yeah, but that's also going to be contingent upon what the Bucks do in the future, and if they can keep Giannis happy. I think that is something to pay attention to in the offseason for sure. But I think that when you talk about the Los Angeles Lakers with Luka, um, it reminds me a lot of Shaq when he left Orlando in free agency to go to the Lakers. It was a conversational starter, and it was a magnet that attracted uh, high quality role players to team with Luca and LeBron for at least the next year or two. We'll see what happens after that. I do think that the pieces that the Lakers have on their team currently also complement them well. If I can make any comparison, it feels like a mature version of the 2003 2004 Cleveland Cavaliers with LeBron and Carlos Boozer
Mm.
and Darius Miles and some of those other guys. I always wonder had they stayed together what that team would have looked like. And when I look at the Lakers, I think the improvement of Austin Reeves, or the growth of Austin Reeves, coupled with the experience of LeBron, the experience of Luca, and the new scenery for Luca, alongside bringing in an Alex Lynn. Kendrick Perkins said this to me the other day, and I agree. People weren't talking about Timothy Mozgov like that. until he came to Cleveland and teamed alongside J.R. Smith, LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, and more, if you will, and to credit Perk and to take that and raise him. I mean, I've watched Alex Lynn over the years. Great complimentary guy. Defensively fills the position and has the ability to have the presence that we thought Jackson Hayes, healthy, would have and did not. And so I think in today's NBA, where it's very guard oriented and bigs do play some role of guard, but anytime you have Luka and LeBron alongside of each other, I do think good things can happen potentially, and I think that that's what the Lakers were looking towards doing with head coach JJ Redick.
I mean, Luka and LeBron alone are going to be able to do a lot of heavy lifting. And like I said, I think Luka is finally the kind of player because I've always said like LeBron, he's too good of a point guard and a mind to just like he's not going back to Mario Chalmers. D'Angelo Russell was never going to completely satisfy his needs to have a point guard to say to trust more than himself as the point guard and lead facilitator. Like these are good players like Russell Westbrook, all these different guards and stuff, but like it would need to be a guy like Luka for us to start seeing someone else bringing that ball up the court, especially in high pressure must score situations where LeBron can actually truly and happily play off the ball. And that in itself is scary. And Luka is such a powerful volume individual force. He can win a playoff series almost by himself. I mean, it feels like we've seen him do it.
And I think that we talk about the Lakers and their move. I think that on the Mavs side, I think the move equally benefited both teams, assuming that Kyrie does sign his extension this offseason and that, Anthony Davis does stay. I do think that I think that people have sour grapes because they were so sold on Luca, and I think a lot of people were writing Luca's story, and Luca has to write his own story because I think for a while people were looking at Luca as being the second coming of Dirk Nowitzki and staying with one team. And in today's basketball landscape, it's kind of like the corporate world for a lot of people. People are moving around. It's not, there's no loyalty into one team anymore. And so I'm glad that Luca was forced to write his own story, one, but two, he can do it in Los Angeles. And three, Dallas is going to have to just get over it. And I think that with Anthony Davis in Dallas and Kyrie in Dallas, I know that Kyrie, part of the reason why he signed with the Mavs was because he was tasked to recruit. That was why he brought in Klay Thompson. You know that you mentioned that I am usually way ahead of the curve in basketball and in fashion, but and that my reporting stemmed on Kyrie and the sneaker brand Anta, and that both he and Klay Thompson are both anti-athletes, and he used his leverage both there and also just being around, being a multiple All-Star and USA basketball member with Klay in the past, and brought them in. But I know that with Anthony Davis and Kyrie, there was a conversation in 2017, 2018 of the potential of Kyrie and Anthony Davis being teammates in Boston, and they ultimately years later became teammates in Dallas. And so I think they have to figure out, I don't want to speak for either one, but figuring out whether they want to finish their career in Dallas. I know that Kyrie, is in a good space with his family. And I think he's more than raised his value. So I do think there are other teams out there that could take an interest in him. I don't know any off the top of my head, but what I am saying is if he's looking to move elsewhere, he could. He's more than repaired his image in the way that he's being perceived. And I think at the same time, however, both he and Dallas have mutually, shown each other the proper love and respect that is deserved. And I'm hopeful that they figure something out. And that's where trades and free agency come in. I know that Kevin Durant is a person that could find his way elsewhere if the Phoenix Suns do make trades. I know that Kyrie and Kevin were looking to be teammates again, right up until they were ultimately traded elsewhere to their respective current teams. And so when you look at those guys, I know that at one time Phoenix was a thought in free agency. Phoenix was a thought via trade, and there were teams that did reach out to the Phoenix Suns at the deadline. Dallas, from my understanding, was one of them, as well as the Phoenix, excuse me, as well as the Washington Wizards. And I know that there could be more teams that will call on behalf of their respective team about Kevin Durant. The Rockets will be one of those teams. The Dallas Mavericks could be one of those teams. So imagine a world where Kyrie and Kevin Durant do become teammates again on another team. That would be interesting.
Yeah, it would. And KD apparently didn't want to go back to the Warriors. And like I started by saying, I thought KD and LeBron, and apparently, again, going back to your reporting from years ago, it almost happened. It was pretty much about to happen that KD and LeBron would team up on the Lakers. But I couldn't help but look at where they were, and maybe it would have been too much, but for the league, for each of them, and especially again, looking at just where they've each landed in the last few years, where it's just kind of weird seeing them again so great late in their careers, KD, Steph, and LeBron. It's like you want to see them, you don't want to see them on a team that's like below 500, that's like scraping for wins and is not. I mean, we can appreciate their individual greatness still so much, but their teams are not championship contenders. And it's not to say they have to be every year, but it's just it's a little disappointing. And so when I thought about it, I'm like, man, that KD and LeBron thing, that would have shook up the league. That would have gave them like and yeah, people would have called it kill and it would have been probably a little unfair, but hey,
They
ratings
were
would have been fine.
points in their career. One, I don't feel so sorry for Steph because Steph has Jimmy Butler as well as Draymond Green. And one thing about the Warriors is, and they showed you this in 2022, and as well, and almost did in 2023, they can scrape themselves from the bottom and still win a championship. To me, the Golden State Warriors in this era of basketball are the modern day San Antonio Spurs. Where they find ways to still get to the championship and sneak up on you, like that fourth or fifth cup of wine at the holiday party. You like, where did that come from? So when you look at the Warriors, there's that. As far as LeBron and where he is and was in his career, as well as Kevin Durant, you're looking at a LeBron in 2018 who had Hollywood in his palm, leaving Cleveland, was on the cover of NBA 2K at the time. Space Jam, The Shop, and all of those things, getting those tax breaks to move his production company to Los Angeles, and basically Rich Paul, his agent, as well as his business partner, Maverick Carter, going in LA and getting things done. He's done all that now. And so I think where he is now, professionally, I feel like he is. I've always felt this way, and I really feel this way now. He is in his Michael Jordan Washington Wizards phase, where Michael was still giving young folks the business and still being effective. He just wasn't making deep runs in the playoffs, and bringing in Luka is no pairing with Michael Jordan and Rip Hamilton or Michael Jordan and Jerry Stackhouse.
Right.
Very much an improved version of that. You don't have Jahidi White and Kwame Brown. You have Rui Hachimura. You have Austin Reeves. You have Luka Doncic, and more. And I think that this is the improved version of that. By no means am I calling LeBron Michael or comparing him to Michael, but he is in his moment that we can only compare it to Michael in Washington, because Magic Johnson, when he returned to the league in the mid 90s, it wasn't the same. There were different health circumstances there. Even though I think he and LeBron have a similar skill set. But when I look at the Lakers and their help support staff, I also wonder what that would have looked like if Darvin Ham was still a head coach. And I don't think LeBron and Darvin Ham could have coexisted in that way. And I think, bringing in JJ Redick as a rookie head coach and having a help support staff, if I'm Darvin Ham, I'd feel away. Just being honest with you, but the Lakers are moving forward, and they still have to compete in the West with the Houston's of the world. They still have to compete with the Memphis Grizzlies of the world. They still have to compete with the MVP candidate in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander and his Oklahoma City Thunder team, who have been consistent most of the season. And that's just on the Western Conference side, rather. The Eastern Conference side has their Boston Celtics, Cleveland Cavaliers, New York Knicks, and others that the Lakers are going to have to compete with as well. So just because you have star power doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to run through the NBA's elite, because LeBron has seen that he's lost a few championships going up against the Warriors, who nobody saw coming in 2015.
Dallas is not getting over that. Dallas, it'll take a long time. I don't know if anyone alive who's a Mavericks fan will ever get over that. They've lost any chance of truly being considered a title contender. Like with Luka, your belief, your faith is different in your team. And now they're kind of just another one of those teams. It feels like a good team, competitive if everyone's healthy. But man, I
You,
just think if they're not
you,
getting over that.
you think about it, right? Um, 2007, when the Cavs went to the finals and played against the
Spurs.
San Antonio Spurs, LeBron experiencing that disappointment, and Tim Duncan and LeBron having that moment, and Tim Duncan basically telling him it's going to be your league at some point, but thanks for the trophy this year. Like Cleveland stuck with LeBron for at least 3 more seasons before he ultimately went to Miami. You went in the Mavericks' eyes of losing in the finals to the Boston Celtics, who were a better team, um, to coming back the following season and at the trade deadline trading him away. To me, the minute Kyrie Irving got traded to the Dallas Mavericks, even though Luka was the face, Kyrie was slowly becoming the face, at least popularity wise.
Mm.
And Thompson became the Kyrie replacement of where Kyrie was when he was playing second fiddle at the time to Luka Doncic. And now it's Kyrie's team, and Anthony Davis is there. The only way to fix that is to bring in more star power. And I'm no mathematician, but you're kind of locked in with those contracts and the notion or the perception that you traded away their best player. How do I know that my security is safe? Because it's a different ballgame now. Mark Cuban is no longer the majority owner. You have a whole different ownership group. So it's not like I'm playing for Mark Cuban anymore. You're playing for someone that most of the general public in the NBA doesn't really know much about this ownership group as you would Mark Cuban.
There's a clip of Anthony Edwards from All Star Weekend saying that he's not interested in being the face of the league. And there's the whole conversation about who's going to take that mantle next.
Tell the truth.
Tell the
Just tell the
truth.
truth. You can
I
and will
yeah.
be that guy.
Well, I'm capable of being
There
that
you
guy,
go.
but I don't I don't I don't want to be that guy. Put it like that. I want to be the guy to just show up and hoop and just kill dudes and go home.
First of all, if Anthony Edwards, Brandon, were to somehow manufacture a championship, maybe even just a finals run in the next few years, he won't have a choice. It won't matter if he wants to be the face or not. It'll be him because his talent on the floor, his marketability, his personality, it's all there. He might have some things to clean up with his country self and the way he speaks to former presidents, but that's a different thing. But I love it though. I love his personality. I think it's natural. I think it's raw. I think it's great. I think you should feed into that because seems like a good young dude. Like, doesn't seem like wild or reckless or anything. He's just himself. And he's hilarious. So I just think that would be if he were, especially in Minnesota, if he did something special in Minnesota, he wouldn't have a choice. We would start talking about him in that way. But my thing is, Brandon, when does the Minnesota curse kick in? Because I haven't looked at his contract or how much longer he has, but I would bet money that a championship won't come to Minnesota anytime soon. And eventually we're going to be talking about where should Anthony Edwards go in free agency, or should they trade him, or what other star should he team up with? Because he's going to be one of the next dominoes to fall.
Did you hear me?
Did you? I think I saw your lips move. What did I see? Phoenix.
The Knicks.
Oh, I'm mad you beat me to it. That was in my that was in my mind as a premier shooting guard. When's the last time the Knicks had a? I'm just thinking of like just as shooting guard perspective. That would be perfect.
That's all I'm saying about that. So, I, a mentee of mine, uh, my boy Josh Hicks out of Chicago, he wouldn't mind me saying this. He and I were texting during All Star, and he sent me a text and he said, "I'm thinking Wemby was going to be the." He goes, "The league really needs to start prepping for whoever to take that next spot as the face of the league." And I said, "They have." I said Luka and Wemby could ultimately be the next LeBron and KD. I said Wemby met with Adam Silver for dinner the night before the draft, and they talked in depth about their plans and Wemby's plans for just the future. And the conversation of being the face of the league came up. And Josh said to me, Luka Wemby is a great Bron KD replacement, though. Wemby seems like a guy who would love that challenge. And I said, Anthony Edwards will also be in the conversation. This is Sunday during the All-Star game because we weren't watching the game, so we were texting. And he says, and when I said Anthony Edwards will be in the conversation, he said, I honestly hope it is him. But I don't know if he really wants it like that and will be put into shaping him into that way. I said, Ja is also still there, Tatum, Brown, Brunson as well. I said it can change. Look at Cat. Was supposed to be in that position that he is in now. And I said, matter of perspective. In 2024, we are in the spot we were in 10 years ago. Look at the All-Star roster from the 2014 All-Star game and look at how much has changed since. 2014 All-Star game had LeBron, Carmelo Anthony, Joakim Noah, Dwight Howard, Joe Johnson as headliners. KD, Harden, Kyrie, Steph were next up. 10 years later, they're about to pass the baton. Think about that. In 2014, Steph Curry was in the All-Star game. A year later, he won a championship. A couple years later, KD joined him in Golden State. Harden left Houston, went to Brooklyn with Kyrie. Kyrie won a championship in 2016 with the Cavs with LeBron because later that year in 2014, LeBron came back to Cleveland. Couple years later, Kyrie found his way out of Cleveland because he knew LeBron was not staying in Cleveland and he was going to the Lakers. And ultimately, he went to the Lakers, and then Kyrie went to Brooklyn and started his own thing with Kevin. 2014, those guys were on the come up. We're in the same position we're in 2025 that we were in 2014.
Right. And so when you look at these guys, Wemby they got him Chris Paul, which was that's a great gift for him even at this stage in his career. Now he's got De'Aaron Fox.
Yes.
Now he's got De'Aaron Fox. Luka
is going to replace Chris Paul in the next year or two.
Absolutely, and that's the idea. I mean, they just got you a running mate. So I'm bringing this back to Anthony Edwards. Shea is in a great position in OKC. He's got the best roster out of all of them. He's perfectly fine. He doesn't need a super team. He's great. They're like the OKC before they let go of KD, Harden, and Russ, and I don't think they're going to mess that up again. They're going to be fine. He's in a great situation. Luka, they were shuffling through. They got him Kyrie Irving. They got Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving. So yeah. I'm looking at Anthony Edwards. I'm looking at Trae Young and Atlanta. And I hate to put it this way because I'm not just saying every star needs to team up and needs to be on a super team, but we've been in this era for over a decade now where stars move. They get tired of carrying the load of the franchise. Anthony Edwards has now had a chance to play with Team USA. He's had a chance to play alongside Kevin Durant, LeBron James, Steph Curry, all the other great players in the league, Devin Booker. So now he's got a taste of that. How long until he gets tired of having to play with Rudy Gobert every week? I'm telling you, bro, it's not sustainable.
Joel Embiid thought that that's what he was doing this past summer, and there's a maturity in being around your peers while still also being the man that is your current team. And Anthony Edwards has done that in his own way. And I think part of it is because he's not in the Northeast market like Joel Embiid, where everything is magnified. But I also do think that there is a benefit in that. You know, I've been big on both the Thunder and the Timberwolves for some time, for the last few years. And the thing that both those teams have is just exclusivity, playing in a college-like town and not being in under the microscope in a New York or Philly. For Anthony Edwards, whether that is, coming home to an Atlanta, whether that is playing for the New York Knicks, whether that is, San Antonio or wherever, I think it's going to come down to fit and not holding people to a standard of what you want, which is what I said about Luka Doncic and not following the path of Dirk Nowitzki. I think even with Minnesota, We've seen iterations of the Timberwolves over the years. In '96, with Kevin Garnett and Stephon Marbury and Tom Gugliotta and some of those other guys. Money didn't and just conflict ultimately had Stephon request a trade to play for the New Jersey Nets, and then Garnett staying just enough time to leave to go to Boston. We've seen that even with Cat, I think, leaving similarly like Kevin Garnett. Like we see these themes over and over again, and they replicate themselves. We've seen it with the Nets. We saw the Nets compete in '98 with the Bulls with Kendall Gill and Sam Cassell and those guys, and being on the cover of Slam magazine and then not get it done. And then we saw it again with Jay Kidd and Kenyon and Kerry Kittles and not getting it done against the Lakers and the Spurs. And then you saw it again with Kyrie and Kevin. Like you had two of the best guys in the league that are still buzzing in the league, and they weren't able to do it. So it's like you wonder if these things continue to replicate themselves. Will the Chicago Bulls continue to be ringless without Michael Jordan? It's like some of these things, they replicate themselves. And so when you look at the Edwards, I think there is truth to what you said. Like at what point do I look elsewhere? It's not today, it's not tomorrow, but it's also going to depend on what Minnesota adds to their roster in the future.
Brandon Scoop B. Robinson, trusted, experienced NBA insider, my friend for years. Good to have you, man. We'll probably keep doing this, talking some NBA. Good to have you whenever I can get him. He's a busy guy, so I appreciate you taking the time, man. Good to see you.
I ain't hard to find, brother. Thank you for the opportunity to be myself.
If you liked this episode of the Basketball Society podcast, I need you to go down and click like, leave us a comment, and subscribe to Basketball Society for more content, breakdowns, interviews, and episodes of the show.